Before we get started, I have a challenge for you. Make an ADHD joke I haven't heard 100 times. Leave it in the comments. And kudos if it's actually funny. To a lot of people, ADHD is a punchline meant to give levity to the idea of absent-mindedness or a bratty kid.
I am Cornholio.
I was an absent-minded bratty kid. It's like when somebody says they have OCD because they're a neat freak. By the way, between ADHD and OCD, I'm picking ADHD every time. Obsess or forget. Pretty easy choice. You might not realize it, but we've already covered the first in my list of the most stereotypical notions about ADHD. That being the idea that losing your train of thought is the same as ADHD. And we talked about the bratty kid thing too, but I'll get back to that. Thanks to Pixar, probably the most popular ADHD joke these days is... Seriously though, I think I can speak for 99% of anybody with ADHD in saying that we've heard that squirrel joke way too many times. And here's the thing about it. Dogs love squirrels, even neurotypical dogs. And that same fixated distraction happens to all people. If a gearhead gets into a conversation and an old Camaro or a GTR drives by, you can guarantee they're gonna turn their head toward that car. Someone smoking hot walks by, you're gonna get distracted. If you're talking to a sports fan, they notice a game on TV, that conversation's gonna get choppy. That's why I never eat at sports bars with my wife. And people with ADHD are subject to these same distractions, but a lot of the time, we're subject to these distractions without external stimuli. Stimuli. We end up thinking about weird stuff that has nothing to do with whatever social situation we're in. I try to keep a lid on my vaguely related thoughts. It's an acquired skill, I haven't perfected it. And a lot of times I just end up interrupting anyway. This t-shirt I found explains it pretty well. And there are variations on the squirrel joke, like the let's ride bikes thing. How many ADHDers does it take to screw in a light bulb? Let's ride bikes. I guess that's supposed to be an example of a non-sequitur without the outside stimulus. Do you know what? For me, in my head, a lot of times they're not non sequitur. Let me explain how my brain would divert from talking about pizza to Moana, which really isn't that big a leap, honestly. You're at a party ordering pizza. Somebody orders something weird on the pizza. By the way, pineapple is for desserts. It's not a pizza topping. Anyway, somebody orders something weird on the pizza. Clams, chimichurri, figs, pears. Those are all real choices you can get right here in Austin, by the way. These weird toppings make me think of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles because they were always ordering weird pizza. Then I think about how the Ninja Turtles started out being something more for adults or teenagers and ended up being something 4-year-olds watch on Nickelodeon. I mean, in their first comic, when they confront their enemy Shredder, they bash his face, stab him in the chest, and insist he commit Harry Carey. And when he refuses and pulls out a grenade, they shove him off the roof. Nickelodeon. So if the Ninja Turtles get more childlike as they go, it's a matter of time before they're gonna be baby turtles. Baby turtles come from eggs on the beach. Remember when baby Moana helped that baby turtle go to the beach? See what I mean? Now to you that might seem like a long-winded mental road trip, but in my head it happens like that. Meanwhile, I'm also mentally noting that I should tell you that Moana was not a Pixar film. And yes, for the few seconds I was thinking about Ninja Turtles and Moana, I was distracted, and meanwhile some jerk ordered pineapple on the pizza. My point is, it's not that random. Then there's that t-shirt joke, the I never finish anything. Or this one. Ask me about my ADHD, or pie, my cat, a dog, TV, a rock. Totally random, unconnected words. That's the idea. Funny, right? And the thing is, it's not even ADHD, that's schizophasia. I heard an ADHD joke the other day, and I might have gotten offended, but I wasn't paying attention when they got to the punchline. That's about as clever as that joke structure gets. I'm not even gonna recite the concentration camp joke. I get why people think it's funny. I don't think it's funny. I think it's offensive. Google it if you care. Who's glad fidget spinners went away? Those and all those other fidget toys were supposed to be a panacea for everybody with ADHD. So you're allowed to play with this one little toy which keeps you in your seat and apparently calms you down and helps you deal with the world, and most importantly to everyone else, supposedly keeps you from being obnoxious. So many people bought into this with no scientific evidence to back it up. I even bought into it. I have like 8 different fidget toys and I never used them. And that's because, here, focus on this one thing we told told you to focus on isn't how ADHD works. In fact, it's the opposite. If I could focus on the one thing you told me to focus on, I'd have had a higher GPA in school. And by the way, I can focus at times, especially if it's something very interesting to me or something I absolutely have to get done by a certain time. If you haven't heard of it, it's called hyperfocusing. Kind of a superpower, but not a good one. Better than Sandwich Joe. That's why I didn't record a video last week. I had to do a demo video, and I was sorting through the hard drives I thought were already decently organized, but weren't. But they're organized now, and by the way, that demo reel's on my other channel. I'll link it at the end. But hyperfocusing can make you work on something so hard that you forget to eat or sleep or care about anything else. Fatiguing. How about the notion of ADHD being an excuse for raising bratty kids? I certainly feel like ADHD was overdiagnosed in the 90s and the early 2000s. I think a lot of teachers and parents thought if they could solve a discipline problem with a pill, life would be much simpler. And I think a lot of those kids were indeed just brats. And then maybe a lot of them had something else going on. Maybe they were misdiagnosed and actually mildly autistic. Maybe they were dealing with emotional health issues. Maybe they even had mild Tourette syndrome. Maybe their sleep schedule was chronically inadequate. Back in my days as a kid, ADHD was pretty much not a thing. I mean, it was a thing, but it wasn't wildly known. They actually called it the hyperkinetic disorder of childhood. And it wasn't even officially listed in the DSM manual till 1980. And there were stigmas connected to going to a psychiatrist, and they were expensive, and treatment methods back then weren't that good. There weren't a lot of resources, and they basically just prescribed the kids Pemoline or Dexedrine. That's right, kid, mommy's diet pills can help you concentrate. The Ritalin explosion didn't happen to the late 80s. I was a kid in the 70s. In my little hometown, we didn't know about any of this stuff. You weren't ADHD, you were just a stupid little brat. I was an adult before I realized I wasn't actually stupid. Side note, I try to keep things light in my videos, but that last sentence was really hard to say. I wasn't officially diagnosed with ADHD until I was in my 40s. There were people trying to tell me I had it when I was in my 20s, but I fought them off with everything I had. I still to this day have to keep reminding myself I'm not actually stupid. And I don't always believe it, but enough of the serious stuff. More so than today, back in the days I was young, people thought children's behavioral issues were due to changes in parenting techniques and society. Increased divorce rates among parents, increased classroom sizes, the popularity of electronics and video games. Who had the 2600? I had the 2600. Sugary foods. And most importantly, changes in the way kids were disciplined. Suddenly in the late 70s and early 80s, it fell out of fashion to hit your kids with belts and fly swatters. Spankings were considered abusive. Not officially, it's a state-to-state thing, but it's generally frowned upon. Generally. There are still people who believe ADHD isn't real and these defects in behavior are a product of nurture, not nature. But if spankings were the cure-all they're meant to be, everybody who grew up in that era, it'd be perfect, right? Quick, make a mental list of all the boomers you know. See what I mean? Now go to your corner for your timeout. If I earned your subscription today, please hit the button and the bell. My daughter also makes videos. I'll link her at the end. Thanks for watching. Stay out of the comfort zone.
Welcome to Nicole and Control. I'm going to teach you how to make a stop motion video with an iPad and Adobe Rush. Make sure if you're using an iPad to prop it up securely so it won't move.